What is up, everybody? Hugo No, we're back with another video, and in today's video I want to discuss and talk about what we know so far of Stranger Things Tales from 85. This is my third time trying to record this video, and for some reason it seems to be absolutely cursed. The last recording, I don't know what happened to the audio, it just stopped working halfway through, and then before that I forgot to hit record, and then before that the file was corrupted, so I hope I get it this time. Oh my goodness gracious. All right, where do I start? So, as you guys know, this show is coming out April 23rd, and it's being created by the Duffer Brothers. Executive producer is going to be Sean Levi, and he has worked on some of my favorite episodes. For example, season 4, we had Dear Billy. The showrunner for the show is going to be Eric Robles, which I did some research on him. He worked on a show that I grew up watching in Nickelodeon called Fanboy and Chum Chum, and then he also did some character work on The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy for Cartoon Network, and that was more the era that I kind of grew up watching Cartoon Network in, so I'm kind of excited about that. It is being animated by Flying Bark Productions, and Flying Bark Productions, I didn't know this, but they actually worked on the What If series for Marvel that came out on Disney Plus, and they also did the TMNT show that I believe aired on Cartoon Network as well. That was more like 2017, and then a TMNT movie came out in like 2022 if I'm not mistaken. That's enough about them. I wanted to briefly just talk about everything that has come out that we know so far. For example, this series does take place after season 2 but before season 3, which is going to be the winter of 85. Remember, season 2 took place around October, while season 5 took place around the 4th of July. That's why we got that final finale with all those fireworks and stuff like that. This takes place right in the winter, somewhere around Christmas, and they originally wanted to have more of a traditional 80s cartoon style. Some 80s cartoons that I could think of were the Transformers animated series, He-Man, Thundercats, and there's one more that's escaping me right now. Oh, the Real Ghostbusters, which the Real Ghostbusters was one that Eric Robles talked about, how that was more or less his inspiration, especially when it came to how canon this show is going to be, and we'll talk about that for a little bit. So they ended up changing the animation style from that classic 80s look to more of a realistic animation style, and that's just because they noticed just how dark this show got. I do want to emphasize that they were mentioning just how no character is safe, and then some characters actually may die. This makes me think of the new character that they're introducing named Nikki Baxter. We have this screenshot of them and the crew. They might ultimately do the Netflix treatment to new characters, the same treatment that Bob Newby got, as well as Eddie Munson, which they just kind of, you know, it would make sense why they don't really talk about this character going forward. I will address, though, what their philosophy is regarding what we're getting to see here in the animated series and how come none of that stuff is being brought up in seasons 3, 4, and 5. And that just ties back to the Real Ghostbusters 80s cartoon. Their defense for, hey, how come no character has ever brought up any of what we're about to see in Tales of 85? And their answer is super simple. This article from IGN kind of ties those 2 points together. The reason for this is pretty simple. If they fought monsters between seasons, why wouldn't they come up in a conversation during seasons? The answer is that Tales from 85 exists in its own continuity, and in that continuity, Hawkins Lab is messing with the Upside Down. Showrunner Eric Robles explained to Doom that all of this is still connected to the Upside Down, so there is the DNA of Upside Down creatures in all of our creatures. It's like Hawkins Lab science meets Upside Down matter. When you put them together, these are the kinds of creatures that we have in our world. Does that make this show canon? Yes and no, okay? And this is where you kind of have to suspend your disbelief just a little bit, because later on in this article, we get this quote. So by not contradicting, one can simply imagine that fighting plant monsters before the summer of 85 in season 3 just never came up in conversation on screen, but they were talking about it all the time off screen. So it's one of those things that if you don't mention it, it cannot not be true. And that's the approach that they're taking when it comes to this show. Again, tying it back to the Rio Ghostbusters, where was a big inspiration for the show. The Ghostbusters, they didn't do anything that contradicted the live action adventures and the live action movies. It just kind of expanded them a little bit in their own constrained world where that animated show existed. That's kind of their philosophy when it comes to the show. So by all means, this show is canon, and just because they don't talk about it in seasons 3, 4, and 5 doesn't make it not canon, because of the characters. We're just simply talking about it off screen. And again, could we really say that they weren't? It's an interesting take, but I understand why they had to do it. So the way that they actually settled on the art direction and art design is that Eric Robles came across this illustrator's work, which was essentially fan art of Stranger Things. I'll link her Instagram in the bio because I think her art is really cool. Her name is Mavis Ruiz Cruz. So what she ended up doing is she ended up doing some of the busts for the characters to make the CG character work. And they were essentially able to bring her character designs to life based on the artwork that she provided, which is really freaking cool because I really do like her art style. In my reaction video, I mentioned how much I like the animation. It reminded me of Monster House, but then the more I looked at it, it gave me Arcane vibes as well. So when I looked at Mavis's Instagram, I saw that she also makes Arcane fan art, and I was like, oh, cool. It's all coming full circle. That's awesome. So definitely check it out. There's a lot of work that I think you guys will really like. So what else can we expect from the actual show itself? So Eric Robles did an interview with Doom, which I believe is just a news article site by Netflix. Just, I guess they just have conversations with the directors and showrunners and all that stuff, where he did mention that these kids are not going to be saving the world in this story. They're just going to be focusing on saving their town. So the scale is much smaller. There is no Vecna, there is no military, there is no none of that. It's just them seeing things are weird around Hawkins and they want to figure out why, and that's pretty much what the show is going to be focused on, everything on a smaller scale. They also do want to emphasize that this is going to stay pretty much within the kids. They're not going to try to rope any adult into the story, and this is what Robles had to say about that. This series is really about these kids protecting Eleven, because if this thing blows out of proportion, then the government shows up and everything gets lost. When you're given the responsibility of taking care of your best friend, then you have to keep it between the kids and not bring adults into the story. Season 1 of Stranger Things did a great job of that. So we kept that in mind for Tales from 85. We want the audience to feel that these kids are in danger, the stakes are real, and bad things can happen to anyone. And things do happen to individuals that are very scary in a sense. So that really makes the danger for these kids that much more tangible. I like that he did say this because I feel like a lot of the darker tone of the show really got lost in season 3. A lot of characters became more caricatures of themselves. So seeing that they're going back to around season 1 and 2, and even a little bit of season 4, right, of just how dramatic things could be and how stakes actually feel like stakes, unlike the finale, which some people, me, I would agree that they didn't really have that much. So I do want to see what happens and really who gets the boot in this series. I mentioned already, we do have a new character named Nikki. Maybe they will perish. I don't know. We'll have to see about that. But they do emphasize real danger, real stakes. They want to make it seem like there are definitely going to be consequences, and it's just up to the kids to figure it out. Throughout the article, they also mentioned how they want to just ensure that there's a lot of heart and really well-developed moments in the show, which again, that's why I love season 1. I feel like all those moments, all those really emotional beats do hit you at the right time, and it's incredible to see the actress's performance, and I hope that we get those line deliveries now that we are doing more animated and we have to rely more on the voice acting. In terms of other background plot details, is that something that they really pushed for, at least the Duffer Brothers did, was they wanted to hang out with Lucas and Max a little bit more. At the end of season 2, we saw the beginning of their relationship, and then we just kind of jumped to season 3 when they've been together for a little bit, but they really want to take the time to slow things down and see them at the early stages of their relationship and kind of seeing that blossom. It also seems that Dustin is going to be more or less the instigator for this group to look into what's happening around Hawkins. In that same article from To Doom, we got this. For Dustin, there's this sense of, well, what else is there? So when something shows up that isn't normal and feels very upside down, there's a sense of excitement for him. He feels the need to establish something that is going to be meaningful for them as a small team, but it's going to help everybody out. So he comes up with the Hawkins Investigators Club. That's his way of saying, this is ours, this is how we're going to protect Hawkins. I love seeing Dustin do Dustin things, and this is awesome. I hope he gets Steve along for the ride, and we see a lot more of Steve as well, interacting with these kids that he's pretty much still a babysitter for at this point in time in the story. So in this same article, they were asked about some of the challenges that they encountered while trying to figure out what creatures they wanted to conjure up for the animated show. And at first they really wanted to add Demogorgons and add Demo Dogs, but when they gave Eric Robles the reins to do whatever he wanted, they kind of told him, hey, this is your world now. You know, you could come up with the science, you could come up with the creatures, and you could try to put something different out there that the viewers haven't seen before. And that's where we got these like agricultural creatures, this mix of nature and flesh, which I think looked pretty cool. In my reaction video, I mentioned how it gave me Poison Ivy vibes or something like that, because, you know, we're so used to seeing these black tendrils, right, more tentacles than vines from Vecna. So now these are actual vines. These are actual these are creatures that come from, it seems like, the soil, from the ground. And I do have a small theory regarding this. At the end of season 2, when Will gets completely exercised, we see that those black particles come out of him, right? What if those black particles got lost somewhere else? They landed somewhere else in Hawkins, and they started to corrupt the soil and the vines and the plants and everything in its surrounding, even like animals, for example. That's how we got that mole looking creature, right? It's like a combination of flesh but also tree bark and vines. That would be kind of cool to see. And lastly, this is what Robles kind of had to say regarding just why people will connect with this version of Stranger Things. It goes back to early conversations with the Duffer Brothers. We wanted to hang out with them more, but the plot just gets big in Stranger Things. One of the many things we talk about was how awesome it would be if we just got to hang out with these kids on these adventures that are not about saving the world. They're just figuring things out step by step as things get more mysterious. We were able to freeze time and really go on these never before told adventures with them in this timeline. I think that's what really excites us. I just kind of wanted to share some of my thoughts, also share with you guys some things that I found regarding the show and what we can expect. The show comes out in about 2 months, and I'm really excited. I'm a little cautiously optimistic still, but a lot of decent people seem to be tied to the show as well, so I hope that that's reflected in the writing and everything else. Those are just my thoughts and opinions. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. I do appreciate you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you in another video whenever that is. I thank you so much. I'm Hugo Nowhere. You stay golden, and I'll see you in the next video.